I've been asked to try and provide a bit of a summary of the day. So I'll do that quickly. Donna actually started the day talking about the importance of self-determination, and that there's actually a very strong evidence base for that, both in clinical care and in terms of the way policy and data is collected, managed and disseminated. She also talked about how critical it is to have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in management and leadership positions. And so I want to encourage you again to think about your role in communities, not just as being great clinicians, as critical as that is, but also what your role might be in terms of systemic change. Mind you, if you want to stay in clinical care and make that your bread and butter, that's also very valuable and wonderful, of course. But what kind of partnerships and networks might you have to contribute to the sustainable systemic change? The panel drew out the really, again, criticality, just as what Chelsea was saying, of your support networks and your ability to maintain unity under extreme distress. I think the phrase out of Chelsea's speech that I liked in particular is that we are health professionals still within the colony. Let's not pretend that it's sort of a benevolence, white is right. We all treat everyone the same kind of Aussie culture, even though that's what we're told every day we operate within. So those critical skills of unity and networking with your support networks, and actually training and supporting each other in how to deal with racism in the workplace, as subtle and as overt as it can be. The panel also talked about the importance of self-care in that, and making sure that you don't do that work alone, that you rely on your allies and your brothers and sisters. The panel also talked about them strengthening IAHA's role in this national policy agenda, so that rather than focusing only on access and posters and the capacity of Aboriginal students to get through in scholarships, again, as critical as that is, that we have to return the gaze and start looking at the blockages in the system and making non-Aboriginal people responsible for justice. Paul reminded us that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges are critical and useful for mainstream healthcare services, and particularly around funding models, around governance where it works well. He made the great observation that we've got to look at who the right provider or governance network is in a particular area. It might be an ACHO, it might be a PHN, or it might be some other organisation, but the critical principle has to apply is their capacity. What are PHN's capacity to actually understand Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health? Actually very little. What are mainstream health services' capacity to understand and fully understand quality and how to overcome racism, and what is their justice agenda? What we see mainstream organisations doing quite often is I think this is a theme for me out of the day, is we spend a lot of our time trying to get mainstream organisations to acknowledge and to value our knowledge systems and our science and our understandings. But the more that we try and beg them to acknowledge that, actually universities and research institutes are not interested in acknowledging or valuing our knowledge, they're interested in stealing it, quite frankly. So we have to have a very clear understanding of the power relationships in our partnerships with PHNs or mainstream organisations of whatever kind. The real issue here is power. And then Chelsea again summarised all of that beautifully for us about thinking about your role as health professionals in the colony. And I think it's just a really important note for us to end on, that's why it feels hard. It's not because, as she was saying, you just haven't had enough butter baths. It's because we are carrying a double duty load, at least a double duty load. Actually it's triple duty. We're carrying our regular roles as policymakers or clinicians or health workers or whatever role you might be playing. That's what you're paid for. But the other two roles that you're not paid for are dealing with community obligation and the history of post-traumatic stress and trauma. And you're also not regularly paid for dealing with white people's racism and white people's fragility. So this is where IAHA, I think, and organisations like IAHA and IAHA and Katsuan and Matsuwa can play a real key role, is turning the gaze back onto the mainstream system and saying, we're not the problem and we're here doing our part. Actually, we're doing triple duty. What we need now is mainstream health systems to give up a bit of power and money and play their part in closing the gap. It's been a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody. Please give yourselves a round of applause. I will draw out the main things that we have heard, and then we've been provided a list of draft recommendations that we want your feedback on. So self-determination is overwhelmingly one of the key and strongest things out of day one in particular, and the need for unity amongst our professions, amongst our communities, and amongst the organisations that we're working with. We have to be realistic about our own need for self-care and our own need for well-being. And that was a message that was echoed by many of the main speakers. Clinton echoed that. The Nun Cruise this morning spoke about the importance of rest, teamwork, meditation, calling on the higher energy for them. For some of them it was a Christian higher energy, for others it is the country, for others it is other religions, whatever it is for you, or for the earth itself. But self-care and self-wellbeing is critical. There was another very important provocation from Chelsea about not just leaving our efforts there and not just talking about self-care and resilience and how butter baths wasn't going to fix racism. And so she gave us a provocation about understanding our role as health professionals in the colony and having a very realistic conversation about power and money in the organisations that we're engaging with. Then we had Kerry ending us, echoing many of those messages, but talking about emergence and about our role to leave the hierarchies behind and start to emerge as leaders and elders in our own right. So it's been an amazing few days, and a lot of similarity actually between the keynote speakers, depending on where they're coming from, and from the conference sessions as well. So, recommendation.